जय यशोदा नंदना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदा जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारे जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारे जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय ब्रज जन रंजना जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जन जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यमुना तीरवन
नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंद जय गौर भक्त वृंद जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंद जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंद ब्रह्म शब्दे मुख्य अर्थे कहे भगवान चिद ऐश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान ब्रह्म शब्दे मुख्य अर्थे कहे भगवान कहे भगवान चिद ऐश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान ब्रह्म शब्दे मुख्य अर्थ कहे भगवान चिद ऐश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान कहे भगवान ऐश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान न शब्द मुख्य अर्थ है कहे भगवान परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान वैष्णवीस ब्रह्म शब्द मुख्य अर्थ कहे भगवान चिदैश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनूर्ध्व समान ब्रह्म the absolute truth shabde by this word मुख्य डायरेक्ट अर्थे मीनिंग कहे सेज भगवान द सुप्रीम पर्सनालिटी ऑफ गॉड हेड चित ऐश्वर्य स्पिरिचुअल ऑपुलेंस परिपूर्ण फुल ऑफ अनूर्ध्व unsurpassed by anyone saman not equaled by anyone translation and purport by his divine grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada according to direct understanding the absolute truth is the supreme personality of Godhead who has all spiritual opulences no one can be equal to or greater than him. This statement by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:11. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwaniti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagwan. The absolute truth is ultimately understood as Bhagwan, partially understood as Paramatma and vaguely understood as the impersonal Brahman. Bhagwan or the Supreme Personality of Godhead is opulent in all excellence. No one can be equal to or greater than him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:7, where the Lord says, Mattaha parataram naanyad kinchid asti dhananjaya. O conqueror of wealth Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. There are many other verses which prove that the absolute truth in the ultimate sense is understood to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today morning we are reading one of the more challenging sections of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is a remarkable book. I'll talk about this in three broad parts. So first I'll talk about the broad topic. I will take about history of refuting misconceptions in our tradition. That's the broad topic I'll talk. And then talk about Mayavad as a specific misconception that had to be challenged. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita, sorry, what happened? The Chaitanya Charitamrita is sometimes called as a biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Biography means it's a life story written by someone else. Autobiography is when the same person writes it. Actually, however, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is more a book of theology in the form of biography. That means if we compare the Chaitanya Charitamrita with other biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Bhagavad, Chaitanya Mangal. Actually, after Mahaprabhu departed, 27 biographies of his were written, out of which 9 are extant till now. Remaining are lost. So, 20. Now, among these, if you consider, on one side you have CV, you have Chaitanya Mangal, then you have Chaitanya Charitamrita Mahakavya, we have Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak. There are many books like these. Now those books, they are on one side and Chaitanya Charitamrita on the other side. Why? Because these books are primarily about stories. Whereas Chaitanya Charitamrita has stories, but its focus, the stories are there, no doubt, but its focus is on the philosophy. In one sense, if you consider a movie, in a movie, every scene can be elaborated a lot. But when the movie is shot and the editing is done, at the time of editing, generally, one of my friends is a movie director, they say that for a 3-hour movie, generally they do up to 300 hours of shooting. And then, now it's not the same shot being taken again, that also happens. But actually, depending on what kind of movie it is, it can be 6 hours, it can be 10 hours, it can be 15 hours, it can be sometimes hundreds of hours. Same way, if normally a book is written, if generally if a serious author writes a 200-page book, on an average, that author writes about 1,000 pages and then edits out the remaining 800 pages. So they are present as like invisible substance in the book. So similarly, so when an author is writing, the author has to decide what do I want to focus on and what do I want to condense. Because like in a movie, every scene can be elaborated. And what someone elaborates, that indicates that they consider that thing significant. So, suppose somebody makes a movie about some star, say Indiana Jones. And that's the movie about Indiana Jones, but within that, Indiana Jones is there only for 30 minutes. And somebody else's main feature. Then people say, this is not actually an Indiana Jones movie. Then maybe the franchisee wants to retire Indiana Jones and bring some new character. That's why they are doing that. But the point is, what is given maximum space and time reveals what is the priority of the producers. So similarly in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the way it is done is, the pastimes relatively speaking are told, but they are told in brief. And wherever there are philosophical discussions, they are told elaborately. So if you consider the post Chaitanya Mahaprabhu legacy, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed, his legacy was there in 3 main places, in Vrindavan, in Bengal, and in Odisha. So now there's a striking difference. in Bengal, most of the books that were written after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure, they were in Bengali and they were his life stories, his pastimes. Most of the books that, this is, for example, Murari Gupta wrote the Kadcha. Then we have Krishna Chaitanya Charitamrita Mahakavya written by Kavi Karnapur and others. Most of them were biographies in Bengali. Now here in Vrindavan, most of the literature that was produced was in Sanskrit. And this was about philosophy or theology. Now within the Western tradition, philosophy and theology are very strongly differentiated. In India, they are not such a strong differentiation, because philosophy is supposed to be based more on logic and theology is supposed to be more on revelation, on scripture. But both were combined in the Vedic tradition. So anyway, there was a disconnect in one sense, or not a disconnect, but a difference between the two of them. That the kind of books that were written in Bengal and the kind of memories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that were carried forward. So there had to be a sangam between the two, a joining of the two, and that was done by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is born and brought up in Bengal. He heard the stories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu since his childhood. And then he went to Vrindavan. Radha Nityananda Prabhu sent him to Vrindavan. And then when he went to Vrindavan, he was trained in the philosophy by the Goswamis. And then when he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, that was brought back by the first Sankirtan party. The first traveling Sankirtan party was Shyamanand Pandit, Srinivas Acharya and Narottam Das Thakur. So they brought, one of the key books that they brought back was Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Chaitanya Charitamrita it is actually, in one sense, it is a combination of biography and philosophy. And if you see, the emphasis of Chaitanya Charitamrita is relatively speaking on philosophy. Whenever there are philosophical discussions, the longest chapters are there. For example, if you study the Ramananda Rai conversation, it's an astronomically long chapter. Just goes on and on and on and on. So, like that, the longer chapters are philosophy. So here, his focus is on philosophy in general. And what Chaitanya Charitamrita is doing is that the first canto, or not the first canto, the Adi part, it has how many chapters? Anyone knows? 17 chapters. The Madhya has 25 chapters and the Antya has 20 chapters. Is it 17 or is it 19? Let me see, it is 64 chapters actually, so it's 19. If I'm not mistaken. So anyway, but the point is that the Madhya is the longest. And here, in the first chapters, up till 7, what is happening is the philosophy is being established. Then after that, till the chapter 13, more or less, the genealogy will be established. Philosophy means what are the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then after that, who are the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? What are the lineages that are coming from him? And then after that, his life story starts. So actually, this is on the 13th chapter, the Lila begins. So right now, we are in the philosophical section. So normally, whenever a book is to be written, there are books written about how to write the first sentence of a book. Because the first sentence is meant to hook the reader. And that will make them read the second sentence, the third sentence, the fourth sentence. But in one sense, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's purpose is different. You could say the pastimes are very sweet, but he starts the book with philosophy. And philosophy can seem quite demanding. And many times devotees start Chaitanya Charitamrita and they restart Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they restart again, they restart. Because they just can't get through the first few chapters. And sometimes devotees say, okay, just skip the first few chapters, let's go to the pastime straight. So the reason is that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wanted to create the philosophical foundation what are Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings? And how do we understand those teachings? What is his position? What are his teachings? That is making it clear. And that's why this particular pastime of Prakashanand Saraswati, this was like the defining interaction. Mahaprabhu had many important interactions with many people. He had 5 great conversations, which Srila Prabhupada published as his book Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Does anyone know which were the 5 great conversations? Sorry? Yes, Rupa Goswami, okay, Sanatan Goswami, then Ramanand Rai, yes, Ramanand Rai, then Sarvam Bhattacharya, and then Prakashananda Saraswati. So these were the 5 great conversations. And Srila Prabhupada himself knew the mood of Krishnadas Swami. That's why when Prabhupada was not sure whether he would live long enough or he would have time to actually complete the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita, he first focused on giving what was the essence of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the philosophical teachings. There's a conversation where Prabhupada says that several people have told me that I should translate the Chaitanya Bhagavat. But he said, no, I'm going to translate the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because that is going to create the philosophical foundation. So it was important. Now, in one sense, among these, the first 3 are to devotees. So it's not so much outreach as you can call it inreach. Inreach means he's taking people deeper and deeper into the truths of bhakti. Dwarka Bhagwan ki. Now, in one sense, Sarvam Bhattacharya also, he became an insider. He became a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, an important associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Jagannath Puri became Mahaprabhu's base. But the most challenging victory, in one sense, was in Varanasi. Srila Prabhupada says that Varanasi is the Vrindavan of the Mayavadis. That means it is their headquarters, it is their capital. Like say India and Pakistan have a huge rivalry. Now currently India and Pakistan are not playing cricket with each other. But suppose India goes to Pakistan and in Karachi or Islamabad, India defeats Pakistan. That is a big victory. To win on the home territory is easy. To win in the opposite side's territory is difficult. So Mahaprabhu went to Varanasi, and there when he talked with Prakashanand Saraswati, then Prakashanand Saraswati came to know what is Prakash, what is Anand, and what is Saraswati. So he became truly enlightened about the ultimate conclusions of the Vedic scriptures. So it was a stupendous victory. And that is why this particular incident, the conversation with Prakashanand Saraswati, it comes twice in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It comes in Adi 7 and then it comes in Madhya 25. So here it is coming up philosophically, and there it will come up chronologically. Chronologically means linearly the life incidents of Mahaprabhu are being described, and there from that linear perspective that pastime is told when Mahaprabhu visits North India and visits Varanasi. Actually he goes twice. First he goes to Varanasi, then he goes to Vrindavan. From Vrindavan he comes back to Varanasi, and that time he meets and he transforms Prakashanand Saraswati. But it is being described first over here so that his Mahaprabhu's core teaching and his core achievement will be established over here. So in general, when a book is written, at the start of the book you can either have the most appealing content. Suppose if a novel is there, you start the novel in the middle of the action and then people are drawn in. But the other way is to establish authority. Like somebody is giving a class, they might start with a very with a joke or with a very entertaining point, or they can start by quoting a lot of verses. That what I am speaking is not just speculative. This is authorized, this is authentic. So Chaitanya Charitamrita takes that approach. And the authority of Mahaprabhu's teachings is being established over here. How glorious it was. Not just how much based in scripture it was, but how impactful it was. So here Mahaprabhu is having, so this is the first part of the session, where explaining the significance of the particular chapter that we are discussing. Why is this there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and what is happening here? Now specifically in this verse, the topic of discussion is the understanding of the Vedanta Sutra. And Vedanta Sutra begins with what verse? Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now Brahma Jigyasa, now generally we translate it as Brahma means inquire about spirituality, and that is true, and I'll come to that a little later. But what does Brahma mean? Brahma at one level means the ultimate reality. But what does that ultimate reality mean? So Mahaprabhu is establishing over here through reasoning that Brahma means Bhagavan. That Brahma is not the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Brahma actually ultimately refers to Bhagavan. It is the personality of Godhead. So Mahaprabhu is establishing the personal, the ultimacy of the personal dimension of the ultimate reality. So it is not that we reject the impersonal, it's very important. We accept the impersonal also, but we say that there is more to the absolute truth than the impersonal. So let's try to understand this. Chid Aishwarya Paripurna, that Paripurna, it is filled with energy. So let's try to understand this, what it means. See, there is one absolute truth. There is the Param Satya. Vadanti Tattvavidas, Prabhupada quotes in the purport over here. Jnanam Advayam. So this is the Advaya Jnana Tattva. This is the ultimate reality. Now, this ultimate reality, okay, this is what I'm going to speak is going to be a little complicated. So those of you who don't like complicated things, feel free to go to sleep. When something interesting comes, I will tell you. Okay. So I'll try to make the complicated interesting, but it is still going to be complicated. Okay, I'll make it interesting first, then I'll make it complicated. Okay. Let's start with something interesting. Consider a gulab jamun. Okay. Now, suppose, say we are sitting over here and behind us is the kitchen. And then when we perceive the gulab jamun, so let's talk about perception of gulab jamun. So what happens is, the first thing we perceive is the smell, the fragrance. Hey, something is coming over here. This smells so nice. And then we are curious, and then we get up and we go toward the kitchen. And then what do we see is the sight. Hey, these look such attractive, juicy, spherical balls. So nice. And then we pick it up. We ask whether it's offered, and then we take one. And then taste. When there is taste, it is samadhi. So now when we are experiencing the taste, at that time, we are also experiencing the smell and the sight. But the taste is such an overwhelming experience that the smell and sight, they don't really matter that much. So it is the same gulab jamun being perceived at two different degrees of completeness. So now we understand the same gulab jamun. But suppose there would be some person who has only smelled gulab jamun. Maybe somebody is in a prison, and next to the prison is a kitchen. and they constantly get the smell of the gulab jamun, but they have not got anything more than the smell. So let's say that they don't know what it is, they only have the smell, and they come up with a name for it. So let's call it, so only smell, they call it a gulla. So this is a name that they have given. Now suppose somebody else, they're not in jail but they're very poor, and there is a very expensive sweet shop, and they pass by the sweet shop, and from the window they see the gulab jamun. Maybe the smell is coming out, the taste is all, the smell is coming out, and the sight is also there, but they just don't have the money to ever taste it. So then they are experiencing the smell and the sight, and say for this they give it a name, jamu. So now somebody else, they go inside the shop, they see this, they experience the smell, they experience the sight, and they experience the taste, and this they call as gulab jamun. Now so the gulla, the jamu and the gulab jamun, they are achintya bheda bhed. They are simultaneously one and different. So it is, if you consider from one perspective, it is just one object. There is only one object over there. But not only is the experience different for three different people, say if you have three people, not only is their experience different, but based on their experience, they have come up with different names for it. So the first person is experiencing, so they're just experiencing one thing, they call it gula. The second person experiences, they experience it something more, it's the same object. So this is an important point to understand. So this is from the point of the object, there is a bhed. There's no difference, it's one object only. But from the objective, from the perspective of the person, there is bhed, there is difference. So similarly, with respect to the perception of the ultimate reality, there is gradual increase in the perception of the ultimate reality. So when the ultimate reality is to be perceived, at that time the first perception is the perception of Sat. Sat means eternal existence, or we could say eternity. The idea is, when a person is functioning in this world, at that time they start thinking, everything is changing over here. The house in which I stay, that can be demolished, the roads can be changed, the cities can be changed. If you look at the history of the world, entire civilizations have disappeared. Archaeological evidence has found that many people thought the Saraswati river was a myth. There is no such thing as a river. But now we have found that there is an extraordinarily broad river that ran under the desert of Rajasthan. So what was actually a flourishing civilization has now become a desert. So everything can change in the world. So the person starts thinking, is there something that is unchanging? Then that person perceives that matter is constantly changing. There is something beyond that is unchanging. And that unchanging thing is spirit. So this level of realization is a realization of the ultimate reality. But that ultimate reality is perceived only as an unchanging existence. Then as that person moves closer to that ultimate reality, then that person also perceives the chit aspect. That it is not just existing over there, but that ultimate existence is also conscious. And that is conscious and is perceiving this existence. is overseeing this existence, is guiding us in this existence. So, Jiva Goswami explains in Sandarbhas that this level of realization, perceiving the ultimate reality only to be Sat, that is the Brahman or the Brahmajyoti level of realization. So here he says this is the ultimate truth without any energies. See, energy is dynamic. Energy is what brings about change. But here the idea is beyond all change there is unchanging existence. So it's Brahman, it's, you can call it ultimate reality without any energies. So beyond that there is the Chit aspect. Here this is the Paramatma level of realization. And the Paramatma level of realization, it is the ultimate reality with material energies. What do you mean by material energies? That Paramatma is himself completely unchanging, but that Paramatma oversees and guides the changes of this world. Upadrashta anumanta cha brahmayan sarvabhutani. I am guiding the wanderings of living beings. So this is a higher level of realization. That the level is understanding that the Paramatma is also conscious, has material energies and is functioning. At the Brahman level, the idea is this material world is just Maya and we have to get out of Maya and go to Brahman. This is Maya, but at the Paramatma level, you understand this is Maya, but this is not simply Maya. This is Maya that is governed by Paramatma. So now when you go further, you understand that ultimate reality also has the aspect of Ananda. Now Ananda means, the idea here is ultimate reality with spiritual energies. See, the Paramatma is more like a judge. Now, when a judge is sitting on the high seat in the court, the judge is grave. For that job itself, a certain amount of gravitas is required. A judge is not joking and dancing and singing and feasting, isn't it? Judge is grave. Like that, the Paramatma is Sakshi, is grave. But there is another aspect of the ultimate reality, which is the ultimate reality is having spiritual energies. That means the judge has a life, has a personal life beyond being a judge. Like God is Paramatma in the office, but God also has a life at home. And that is the life of Bhagavan. So this is where the Lila becomes the ultimate reality. This is where Lila is when the Bhagavan at the spiritual level reciprocates love with his devotees. So in one sense, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, they are perceptions of the same ultimate reality. Just like the Gulab Jamun and Gulab Jamun, they are perceptions of the same object. But there are different degrees of realization of that object. So, is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan one and the same? Yes, they are one and the same. But they are also different. They are one in terms of the objective reality, but they are different in terms of subjective realization. So, if we consider the ultimate reality, it is the ultimate reality in one sense is three-tier. It is the realization of Brahman, the Paramatma and Bhagavan. So it is three-tier reality, but if you consider from the perspective of only objective reality, then there is complete abhed. It's just one object. But now if you consider in terms of subjective realization, what is the understanding of the person seeking? There is bhed. And therefore the balance is bhed abhed. And how exactly that manifests, that is said to be achintya. So the point is that the ultimate reality is both personal and impersonal. So at the level of when the ultimate reality is being pursued, so we could say from here, when a person is perceiving only the only the sat aspect, at that time this perception is largely impersonal. There is only some existence beyond this, that's all. When the sat plus chit aspects are being perceived, and this realization, Prabhupada at one place says, this is semi-personal. It's not impersonal, but it's not entirely personal also. It's like you may work with a judge for a long time, but how much do you know about the personality of the judge? The judge is very official and formal over there. It's only when we meet that judge in an informal setting, in a non-official role, then we come to know about the personality more. And then when there is Sat, Chit and Ananda, this realization is the personal realization. So from one sense, this is the same object being realized, but it is perceived differently. So at different times across the history of the Vedic tradition, the ultimate truth, it has been understood differently, explained differently. So this was the second part, to understand clearly that there is one absolute truth. There is one absolute truth. So now let's look at, I'll talk about 4 historical phases in how things were emphasized and what it means for us today. Let's see how much we can cover. Let's look at, if we consider the timeline, I will talk about Shankaracharya and the subsequent times. Then I will talk about the Gaudiya, not Ramanacharya, I'll talk about the times of Mahaprabhu and his followers. Then I will talk about the times of Bhakti Siddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. And then finally, I'll talk about today. And we'll see how the understanding that needs to be emphasized has varied. Now at the time of Shankaracharya, if you consider the history of India from the 5th century BC to around 5th century AD, actually across the history of the world, if you see, this is called the classical period. In Greek, there was classical period. The Christianity actually was influential in the West after the 4th century. Constantine adopted it. But at that time, in this classical period, the maximum books propagating atheism were written in India, in the Sanskrit language. So India was the world champion of atheism at that time. Now how is that? Because at this time, Jainism and Buddhism were ruling large parts of India. They were ruling means that most of the kings at these times had adopted Jainism and Buddhism. Ashoka was there and many other kings like that. So at this point, these two schools of thought are clearly non-Vedic. So in the Indian tradition, in Indian philosophy, there are two broad schools of philosophy. They are called as orthodox and heterodox. So orthodox means those which accept the authority of the Vedas. These are also called as astic. So astic is defined differently in the Vedic tradition. It is not belief in God, but it is belief in Vedas. And this is Nastic. So the heterodox schools of thought had become extremely influential. And when Shankaracharya came, it was an emergency situation. And so what he did was, as a matter of strategy, if you consider, see, Buddhism was huge, Jainism was huge, now we could say Dharma also was huge. But Dharma was divided among so many different rituals, different interpretations, this. And the influence had become very weak because of that. This Buddhism was, it is still a large number of people in India were of course following some kind of Vedic rituals. So I'm using the word dharma generally for that. Let's call it Vedic dharma more specifically, because the word dharma was also used by Buddhists. They use the word Dhammapad. That is their book, sacred book. So what Shankaracharya did was, he said that actually all these differences that we have among each other, they are unimportant. And we should focus on unity. And he focused more on intellectual unification. And his way of intellectual unification was, so Shankaracharya, he tried for intellectual unification by emphasizing that aspect of reality, or that aspect of the Vedic teachings which he felt would be the most unifying. And that was the Brahman aspect. He said, yeah, there can be many different gods, but ultimately all these devtas, all the things that you worship, they are manifestations of Brahman. So in his way of teaching, what happened was, Brahman is the Satya. And what is the other part? Jagat is the Mithya. Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya. That all the world with all its differences are just insignificant. They are illusory. They are illusion. I won't go into the difference between the two of them, but basically they didn't matter. And in this way, actually he brought a large part of India, or almost all of India, within the ambit of the Vedic Dharma. People started following the Vedas. So he achieved something very significant. Now Shankaracharya was a brilliant thinker, a brilliant writer, extremely charismatic person, and of course a very evolved saint. His legacy is extraordinary. Now at that particular point, see, in general in history, see, this might seem a little technical, but I'm going to talk of one underlying principle. See, one of my friends is doing his PhD in geopolitics. So one common principle in geopolitics is, there are no permanent friends. There are only permanent national interests. Isn't it? So with whom you will be friends will depend on who will help you promote your national interests. If you consider the world history, when World War II was there, at one level America was on one side and Germany was on the other side. And then Russia joined America and they fought against Germany. But after post-World War II, what happened? America and Germany came on the same side. And Russia went on the other side. Russia became Soviet Russia. So the entire geopolitical scene changed. There's a devotee, he said that his grandfather was in the intelligence in America in the Second World War. And he said after the Second World War, they were constantly spying against Germany, trying to undermine Germany. And he said, after that, when Germany and Americans became friends, he just couldn't digest it. He said he not only resigned from the job, he almost he said, what did I live for? All my life I was trying to defeat and destroy Germany, and now our own leaders are shaking hands with Germany. What is going on? But the point is that national interests are important. The friends and enemies, they vary according to times, place and circumstances. Not so much friends as enemies especially. Who are our enemies, that will vary depending on time, place, circumstance. So at the time of Shankaracharya, if you consider the primary enemies, we could say for Vedic Dharma, the primary enemies at the time of Shankaracharya were Buddhism and Jainism. Once people came back into the Vedic fold, after that, then what is the actual teaching of the Vedas? That became much more important to know. And then after that, so this was, Shankaracharya was roughly around the 7th century. 6-7 centuries. So, from the 10th century onwards, it's almost till 10th to around 17th centuries. In one sense, the battleground changed. Now it was people were within the Vedic fold. So the question was, what is the actual teaching of the Vedas? And thus, the battle became primarily between personalists, those who said that the ultimate teaching of the Vedas is personal, and what is the other? Impersonalists. So this is the battle this is the contours of the battle. This is the boundaries in which the war is happening at the time when Mahaprabhu is present. And in one sense you could say that the way this battle was fought was by writing commentaries on the Vedic texts. And generally, how do you prove that your understanding, your philosophy, each school of thought, how would they prove that that school of thought is conclusive? So in one sense, the Vaishnava Acharyas, now within the personalist tradition, there is also a Shaivite personalist tradition, but the Shaivite personalist tradition is relatively much smaller. Shaivites generally tend to be impersonalists. So the personalism, that's why, is largely associated with Vaishnavas, but it's not entirely. But the point is that the Vaishnava Acharyas took the same books that Shankaracharya had taken, because Shankaracharya's authority had already been established. In fact, we could see in the medieval times are roughly 10 to around 16th centuries, this period. During the medieval times, the grip of Shankaracharya on the Indian mind was, you could say, stronger than the grip that science has on the modern mind. Like as soon as you talk about the soul, the first question most people will ask, is it scientific? Is there a scientific proof for soul? Is there a scientific proof for the existence of God? So, if we have to establish this to some extent, at least some level of scientific rationality has to be there in the presentation. So it was like that. So basically the battleground territory was 3 books. Primarily Vedanta Sutra. Secondarily the Upanishads. And the third was the Bhagavad Gita. So these 3 were called as the Prasthanatraya. See, every war that has to be fought, now there has to be some common ground on which the war has to be fought. If 2 people are arguing, then they have to accept some common authority. So if you don't accept any common authority, it's like 2 people arguing in 2 different languages. I don't understand your language and you don't understand my language. I yell at you and you yell at me. 2 people will just be talking past each other. So there has to be some common authority. That common authority was these 3 books. And this Prasthanatraya was explained in different ways by different acharyas. And Ramanacharya, Madhvacharya, they explained it. Mahaprabhu, the Mahaprabhu is now here debating the meaning of Badrayana Sutras or Vedanta Sutra. And he is establishing Prakashana Saraswati how these sutras actually actually they can be understood much more coherently, much more properly when there is a personalist understanding. If an impersonalist understanding is taken, then there are many verses which have to be downplayed, which have to be secondary meaning has to be taken. There's a lot of intellectual gymnastics needs to be done to try to screw out a particular meaning. It's like this is called, in academy this is called as torture in interpretation. What does this torture in interpretation means? Like, if some crime has happened and now the police want to catch the criminal, or sometimes the police don't want to catch the criminal, but the police want to give maybe the criminal is connected with some politician or some influential person, and the politician just wants some fall guy, some person to take the fall. Then they catch that person, and you committed the crime? No, I didn't commit the crime. Slap it, beat him. You committed the crime? No. Beat. You committed? Yeah, I committed the crime. So like that, sometimes some verses are taken and every interpretation beat the verse. Yeah, ultimate truth is Brahman. Yeah, okay. Ultimate truth. So there is the scriptures themselves. They are written in such a way that sometimes they are open to multiple readings. But even if they are open to multiple readings, still there is a coherent flow of thought within scripture. And that coherent flow of thought means that the various points that are there in the book, how do all of them come together in one unified meaning? So the various Vedantic commentators, they try to show that the scriptures are teaching their philosophical conclusions. But Ramacharya, Madhvacharya, and then after that in our tradition, Baldev Vidyabhushan. Baldev Vidyabhushan was the person who wrote commentaries on all these three, on the Prasthanatraya. And you could say it was in this war, the last salvo for the personalists was fired by Baldev Vidyabhushan. And he established the authenticity of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So it is at this phase that is going on. Now, after that, there is some not exactly breakage, but some diminution. Sakale ne mahata yogo nashta paranta in the Gaudiya Sampradaya till Bhaktivinoda Thakur came up, and then from there the modern phase begins. So now in the modern phase, it starts from. Prabhupada also says that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the founder of the modern day Krishna consciousness movement. Now here again the territory of war changed dramatically. See, while all this was going on, these debates between Shankaracharya and Madhvacharya and their followers were going on, India was being conquered by Islamic rulers. Now it is not just one ruler. There were Turks who came, there were Afghans who came, many people came from different parts of India. Now they had a lot of political domination, there was some cultural destruction, but Islam was never considered to be an intellectual competitor to the Vedic teachings. This is no disrespect of Islam. It is just that it was not considered an intellectual competitor. It was not an intellectual threat at all. So none of the Vaishnava Acharyas had to write any books refuting Quran or refuting Islamic teachings, because it was not an intellectual competitor at all. They wrote books refuting Buddhism, Jainism, Charvakism. So the culture, the lifestyle was so different that people were converted, but generally conversion was by force. It was not by intellectual persuasion. So it is not an intellectual threat. But as the Islamic rule went down and the British came to India, the British influence presented an intellectual threat. Why? Because there was the scientific rationality associated with it. So from the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur onwards, again the battleground changed. So what happened was, on one side was Vedic Dharma, and the other side was Western rationality, or at least it was portrayed Western science, Western technology, and what was seen was behind all this technology is rationality. So in this battleground, basically here many Indians, they started getting enamored by Western thought process, and they started getting attracted towards it. There are some now actually there were two things over there. There's Western rationality, and along with that there was Christian evangelism. So these were two different things. It is not that when Western, primarily it was British over here, or you can say British or English. Now actually in Europe there was a war going on, not a war, a battle going on between the two of them also. That as rationality was growing, Christianity was feeling threatened in UK also. So initially the first people who came to India, they said, first Britishers who came, that we are here for business only. And they said these Indians are very religious people, we shouldn't mess with their religion. In fact, the East India Company actually banned Christian missionaries from coming to India. Because they said that if they come, they will agitate the people, and the people get agitated, then our business will be jeopardized. So at that time, many of the Christian missionaries, they would live in outside India, because they were quite influential in Bengal. The British rule started from Bengal. So they would camp outside India, and they would sneak into Bengal, try to do some preaching and go back. But over a period of time, especially after the 1857, the war for independence, East India Company, basically they realized that we can't, the company can't rule, so Britain took over the rule, and the elections over there, the Tory party, which was more religious, they won. And then they said that the purpose of the British Empire is to spread the message of Jesus. And then evangelization started happening more and more aggressively. But essentially both the Christian evangelism and the Western rationality, both of them were critiquing the Vedic Dharma. And then at this point, what happened unfortunately was that Indians themselves, they started evaluating, okay, what is rational, what is irrational within our own tradition. Now, that is not unfortunate. That is good to evaluate, because rationality was there within our tradition also. But in this evaluation, what ended up happening was, basically, Advaita Vedanta was seen as rational, and Vaishnavism was seen as irrational. Now I'll explain why that happened, but that is how it came about. And if you see, most of the intellectuals who are considered to be the founders or the pioneers of India's independence struggle, most of them, the founders of Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, or Ramakrishna Mission, or all of these, they all tended to be impersonalists. The reason was that they felt that if we have to defend Dharma, now they were not haters of the Vedic teachings, but they felt that Vedic teachings have to be defended against Western rationality. So they said that that part of the Vedic teachings, which could be rationally explained, they emphasized those. And the other, they said, these are not rational. So they said, this is sentimental, these are later accretions. These are later additions. The original Vedas are pure and rational. Afterward, there are many religious faiths came up, they are all irrational. So here, what happened was that the Advaita Vedantins, they very strongly criticized Vaishnavism. And there was reason for that. Many reasons. One of the reasons was that Vaishnavism had, now we are talking primarily of Bengal, but from Bengal, there was similar trends in other parts of the world. But what had happened was, many of the glorifications of the holy name that Mahaprabhu had talked about, and how that one chanting of the holy name can free one from all sinful reactions. Those were taken as a justification for continuing sinful activities. So it was quite common in Bengal at that time that somebody would go to the market and they would have bead bag in one hand and they would come back carrying a fish in the other hand. So eating meat, smoking, drinking, all the while chanting. It is all very common. Similarly, immoral activities were emphasized, were not just where they were legitimized in the name of the chanting of the holy names. And there were all kinds of rituals that were going on. Many of them were superstitious. And their idea was, oh, there is one absolute truth beyond all categories of differentiation in the world. So, that seemed to be very rational. Because the idea is, oh, you have this belief and you have this ritual. What is the logic for this ritual? What is the logic for that ritual? Actually, beyond all beliefs, beyond all rituals, there is one reality. And that is the ultimate reality. So, Christians, at that time, they were trying to establish that our religion is the only one true religion. And they were trying to convert Indians. And they were saying, your religion is so irrational, it's so primitive, it's so irrelevant. So they said that actually you consider that your religion is only one true religion, but the idea that there are different religions, that itself is an illusion. Because there is one ultimate truth, and it is that ultimate truth that you have to attain. Now I won't go too much into the way Advaita Vedanta. Technically, this was called more as a Neo-Mayavad or Neo-Advaita Vedanta. Now why Neo? I'll explain that. So see, when Christianity came to India, it was primarily, Christianity had two different aspects to it. Two main divisions. One was the Catholics and the other were the Protestants. So Britain was primarily Protestant. Portugal was Catholic. So that's why Goa still has a lot of Catholic Christians, because they were over to Portugal. But most of India, those who came were Protestant Christians. The Protestants also went to America. So Protestants, many of them were proponents of what is called often as the prosperity gospel or prosperity theology. That means that our prosperity is the proof that God is pleased with us. Our prosperity is the evidence, our wealth, our power, that is the evidence that God is with us. And their reasoning was, UK is such a small country, and how could it rule the entire world unless it was blessed by God? And their idea is that anybody who does not accept Protestant Christianity, they are all going on the path of the Satan. And they are all going to go to hell. And so, at that time, when India was materially over the years, because of, see, while intellectual tradition had remained in India, but the intellectual tradition of traditional India became irrelevant, because nobody was concerned about what is the meaning of Vedanta Sutra. It is not what does Vedanta Sutra mean. The question is, why does the Vedanta Sutra matter at all? Who cares for it? So many of the intellectuals, they became irrelevant. And the Christians initially, they tried to convert by intellectually refuting intellectually refuting Vedic Dharma. But they found that didn't have much influence on people. Because for most people, see, even when Advaita Vedanta was very prominent in India, for most people, impersonalism is like a very high, rarefied kind of thing. It's not very easy to understand. Most people were still devoted, they were worshippers. So Advaita Vedanta said, yeah, you can worship till you realize that the worshipper and worshipper are one. So they said, yeah, they gave bhakti a place. But they said they gave bhakti a place, but bhakti is lower, mukti is higher. Chaitanya Path, Shankar Mat. You follow the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dancing, singing, but don't go to the Gaudiya Mat, go to the Shankar Mat. That means go to Chaitanya Path, the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shankar Mat. So that was their kind of synthesis, not Achintya Bheda Bhed, it was a different kind of synthesis. But the point I'm making is twofold over here. See, the Christians, they did not succeed much by intellectual persuasion. They tried it, but Indians' attraction towards was not Indians' attraction towards Vedic Dharma was not primarily based on the intellect. It was primarily based on the practices. Going to a temple, doing kirtan, doing this, doing that. So then the Christians in general changed tack. And they said, if your God is real, then why are you so poor? Now, of course, one fact is that it was because of the British exploitation of India that India became poor. India was one of the wealthiest countries, not one of the wealthiest countries. That's why so many aggressors came here. But the point was that Indians were at that time, there was a lot of poverty. See, we can say India was the wealthiest country, but India also had a large population. So in the per capita income, it was not have been very high, it was still high. The point was that the British started saying that if you are blessed by God, then why are you so poor? And therefore, not so much the British specifically, the Christians, the Protestants. So their conversion strategy focused more on humanitarian work. They focused more on three things. The Christian conversion, they started doing through education, opening schools and offering education at cheap or subsidized or in free rates, hospitals, and you could say charity, food charity and stuff like that. Charitable work, humanitarian work. And through this, they started alluring people. Okay, you are sick, you take this treatment. And you take this treatment, we will give you this treatment free, but you have to convert to Christianity. Now, it was not that overt. Sometimes it was that overt. Sometimes it was that the people just go there and say, okay, these Christians they are doing so much for me, I should do something for them. What can I do for them? Maybe I should convert to their religion. So in some cases it was overt, some cases it was more subtle. But either way, when this started happening, at that time, many of the Advaita Vedanta teachers, the Neo-Advaita Vedanta, see, the original Advaitavad, which was propagated by Shankaracharya, was this world is mithya, we just have to go beyond this world to the other world. But the Neo-Advaitavad, it also sought unification. It also sought unification of India, but their focus was on unification for national growth, for social growth. And it was in that context that many of these leaders, the spiritual leaders, they might be well-intentioned, but they were also not exposed to the intellectual side of Vaishnavism so much. So because they were not exposed to intellectual side, they saw the cultural side, and cultural side did seem sentimental, irrational. So in that context, they said that Indians, they spend so much money in temples, worship of the temples, but there are poor people who are starving, and the Christians go and give money to those poor people and they get converted. So why do you need to spend so much money on temples? You help the poor people. So that's how the idea of Daridra Narayan came up. That Manav Seva hi, Madhav Seva hai. That whole idea and all the statements over there, the idea is that we have to be physically strong, we have to be financially strong, we have to be active in this world, we have to be successful in this world. So therefore, you may quote Bhagavad Gita verses, but if you're not physically strong, aggressors will come and kill you. So therefore, you play football. You become physically strong. The Indians are starving, and instead of doing some edible food, you are watering tulsi. Better water something else. Better water something you can eat. So there is, you could say there is a twisted logic. There's a twisted and tragic logic to this. So the people who taught this, they were not fools. They might have been well-intentioned. But the fact was, they targeted Vaishnavism the most. Vaishnavism and to some extent Shaktism also, but Vaishnavism primarily, because Vaishnavism still had a lot of followers. And because they were targeting Vaishnavism, our Vaishnava Acharyas also hit back. So while at one level, the battle was between Western rationality and Vedic Dharma, but within that big battle, the battle became between Vaishnavism and we could say Neo-Mayavad. So what is the difference between Mayavad and Neo-Mayavad? See, Mayavad, this was focused more on world transforming. Traditional Mayavad focused much more on world transcending. This world is mithya, just go beyond it. But Neo-Mayavad was world transforming. We have to become physically strong. We have to make India financially strong. Now those intentions are not wrong, but the target of it was wrong. So the target was that there is no need to put devotional service in competition with, say, social service. There is no need to put the two of them in competition. If somebody is doing devotional service, traditionally, the people who would come to a temple, they would give charity in the temple, and the temples would give free food. So it was not that devotional service was at the cost of society. People who would come to temples, they would have some spiritual experiences. They would understand that there is more to life than material pursuits, and then they would decrease their greed and they would give charity. And the charity that they would give was not just to temples. Charity would be given for humanitarian work also. So this battle itself was wrongly conceived, that there was no need for that battle. But somehow that battle started, and then that battle over the years became quite bitter. So during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what was his legal name? Kedarnath Datta. And Swami Vivekananda's legal name was Narendranath Datta. They were actually distant cousins. But Swami Vivekananda never got to actually meet Bhaktivinoda Thakur and hear from him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur met at the time of, Bhaktivinoda Thakur met Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and they had some quite cordial discussions. But by the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and then Srila Prabhupada, Advaita Vedanta, especially in the new Advaita form, that had become very influential in India. And that had become almost normative. And that's why our Vaishnava Acharyas at that time had to strongly defend Vaishnavism. And in defending Vaishnavism strongly, because Vaishnavism was being criticized, so the counterattack was done. And that counterattack was vital at one level to maintain the value and the validity of bhakti. Otherwise, the idea was that the way it was portrayed is bhakti is the cause of India's lack of prosperity and progress. Because Indians are so caught in bhakti that Indians don't do anything to improve themselves materially. Now Prabhupada has responded to that. Prabhupada says if bhakti means sir bhajan karna and do nothing else, he says you have not understood what is bhakti. He says bhakti also has that aspect of world transforming. Isn't it? Two greatest bhaktas are Arjuna and Hanuman. And they fought wars. So the idea that for world transforming, we have to reject bhakti. This was a wrong polarity. There's no need for that. But that's how it was portrayed. And that's how that battle happened. So that is the history at that time. Now I'll just conclude. I'll take a few more minutes. I'll conclude today's part. What is the situation today now? If you see, we could say broadly, whatever we want to call it, Vedic Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism, whatever the word we use. In today's world, if you consider what are the primary threats today. See, one is Christian conversion. Now, I'm specifically using the word Christian conversion because it's not just Protestant now. The Catholic Church has also become very big in India now. And they are also converting. I was at one interfaith conference, and they said they had like 35 Catholic priests had come. And when I was supposed to talk on some topic on interfaith, and I saw this was in Maharashtra, they were all typical Maharashtrians. And I was supposed to speak in English, and none of them knew English. And they have, So one of them says, I'm a brother, next year I'll become a father. So, so they have this idea that if you convert something like they have different targets, you convert 50 people, then they will build a church for you in your village and you will be made the head of the church. If you convert something like 100 people, they will take you on a tour of Europe, free. If you convert 500 people, higher than Europe is America, so they'll take you to a tour of America. So they have their whole system. And conversion is a much, much bigger challenge today. See, for most people today, Advaita Vedanta or even the Neo-Advaitavad, that is not a major obstacle for them to come to Bhakti. Yes, it is an obstacle, but it is not a major obstacle. It is, I follow this teacher, whether the ultimate truth is personal or impersonal, that is not a very big question occupying people's minds today. The big question is whether there is any ultimate truth at all or not, and whether the ultimate truth matters or not. So Christian conversion is one big challenge. Then Islamic fanaticism is also another big challenge. So now Islam has not always been fanatical. There has always been we can't just see in terms of religious categories. We see in Sattva, Rajoguna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. So that if you consider even now, the Islam in Indonesia is fairly moderate. In fact, I think Indonesia is going to have the national games, and they have chosen Ganesh or Hanuman or something as the Hanuman as the mascot. So they say because that's a part of our cultural legacy. Although the country is majority Islamic, but they are still proud of their legacy, and they acknowledge that there is a Vedic antecedent in their legacy. So, and it's not Islam, it's Islamic fanaticism or Islamic extremism. And then another is, there is left liberalism. The extreme left is all about just completely deconstructing religion and destroying religion. So this idea is that Hinduism is nothing but the discriminatory caste system. And they say the caste system is still discriminatory, it's still going on, and the only way to free India from the caste system is to free India from Hinduism. Because Hinduism is not different from caste, that is their language. Now there are a lot of misconceptions, but in the academic world, left liberalism is very much a threat. So this is the contours of the war that we are fighting right now. So is it that for many people, now is Advaita Vedanta stumbling block on their spiritual journey? Maybe, maybe not. For most people, if they have some interest, some appreciation for Indian spirituality, and then they explore, in Indian spirituality, which are all the other expressions, which are the various expressions present right now, and they may come towards bhakti. So, we cannot get caught today in fighting the battles of yesterday. We have to fight today the battles of today. Now yesterday's battles they were important yesterday, they may also be important today. But are they the most important battles? That depends. So the Vedic tradition has been a tradition of fighting Maya in the brand that is present right now. So Maya also has different brands. It like, say if today we tell people that, don't waste your time hearing radio. Well, who hears radio now? Well, maybe a few people do, but it's more FM and people. Now, radio was a distraction in the past, but today it's not a distraction. Today maybe it's a smartphone, which actually makes people unsmart, not smart. But we have to be fighting the battles of today, and we focus on those battles. And to the extent the battles of the past, what do we learn? We learn the fighting spirit. Two things, we cannot be passive. We cannot just say, you have your view, I have my view, and let's all go for a view. No, we have to challenge misconceptions. But from the past, what we learn is, one is the fighting spirit. That we have to keep fighting. It is not going to be easy to share Krishna Bhakti. There will be challenges, there will be misconceptions, and they will have to be fought. But also, we learn relevance. Relevance means which battles are most important to fight right now. One of the reasons, well, India, it's one of the, in one sense, one of the great mysteries of world history is how India was repeatedly conquered by so many invaders. India had a big population, and generally no invading army can come with a large force. They have a large force, but not a very large force. So one of the reasons was that Indians were caught in fighting among themselves. So, Pratap was a Vaishnava king, Krishna Dev Raya was a Vaishnava king. And one of the worst battles in South Indian history was between Krishna Dev Raya and Prataparudra. So similarly, there are so many battles that were fought which were internecine. Internecine means internally only we were fighting battles. That was political level. At the political level, we got so caught in fighting internal battles that there's a bigger war that was forgotten. Now, it's not that the internal battle was not important. It is also important. Krishna Dev Raya had his own brand of Vaishnavism. He was more of a Madhva Vaishnava. Prataparudra was a Gaudiya Vaishnava. That was a Vaishnava. He was, you could say, it was before he met Mahaprabhu that he fought that war at that time. So he had some Vaishnava inclinations. He was also Advaita. He was not exactly Advaita, he worshipped Jagannath. But that was they were caught in fighting those battles. Shivaji Maharaj was a propagator of Dharma. Now when Shivaji Maharaj one time was arrested and taken to Aurangzeb. Now the commander who arrested him was actually a very, you could say, a very great Rajasthani Vaishnava ruler, Vaishnava general. So he fought and he arrested Shivaji Maharaj. And Shivaji Maharaj had to escape and then go back, and he survived. So sometimes now we may get caught in small battles and forget the big battle. So it's not that just because we are choosing not to fight a battle, doesn't mean that we don't have a fighting spirit. But the point is, which battle is the most important to fight right now? So if we understand that, and then we channel our energy accordingly, then we can be the most effective in our outreach. So Srila Prabhupada fought heroically the battles that he had to fight at that time. Srila Prabhupada did not spend his time writing a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. He could have done that, but that was not the battle that was relevant at that time. So neither the Bhakti-Siddhanta Thakur nor did Bhaktivinoda Thakur. They fought the battles that were relevant at that time. Now of course, even today also there may not be any unanimity about which is the most important battle. And that's why different devotees may prioritize different battles. But we ourselves have to use our God-given intelligence, talk with senior devotees, and understand, based on their experience and their intelligence, which is the most important battle to fight at present. And then we focus on fighting that battle. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. So I started by talking about the structure of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how it is philosophy plus biography, with a special focus on philosophy. It is the integration of the pastimes that were taught in Bengal and the philosophy that was taught in Vrindavan. It is combined together. So it is a distinctive book, and this is the philosophical section within Chaitanya Charitamrita. See, it begins by focusing not on appeal but on authority. That how what is being taught is authoritative. Then the second part I discussed was the understanding of the ultimate reality. That I compared it with, does anyone remember? Gulab Jamun. So how there is three-level perception, Sat, Chit and Ananda. And how it is the same one truth. So in terms of objective reality, it is the same truth. But in terms of subjective realization, it is different. That's how Achintya Bheda Bhed. So objective reality, subjective realization. And then after that, the major part of the talk was understanding the four historical phases in Indian history and the battles that were fought at that time. So these 4 phases were during Shankaracharya's times. The battle was between broadly Dharma, Vedic Dharma versus Buddhism and Jainism. And for that battle, the focus was get everyone to Vedic Dharma. And the way to do that was to emphasize the Advaitic understanding, which in one sense focused more on that which could bring people together. Then in the medieval times is from Ramacharya till Baldev Vidyabhushan, the primary battle was between personalism and impersonalism. So the idea is that battles have to be fought, but we have to fight battles against the current enemies, the contemporary enemies at that time. There are no, like in geopolitics, there are no permanent enemies, there are permanent national interests. So Germany was the enemy of America in the Second World War, but post-World War it became the friend. Then we could say the British times, actually at one level the war was between Vedic Dharma and Western rationality. But within that, it was Western rationality on one side, and also it was Protestant Christians, basically Protestants. Evangelism was also there. But then within that, there is a big sub-battle that came up, and that was between Vaishnavism and Neo-Advaitavad. Because the idea was that they thought that Vaishnavism is irrational and Neo-Advaita was irrational. And this was the time of the battle between Prabhu, at the time when Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Prabhupada, they were all there. And now if you consider today, there is definitely these battles are going on, and these battles go on. But the biggest threats to Dharma are much more from other forces. So we didn't go into too much discussion of the forces, but these are, we could say, Christian evangelism, there is Islamic extremism, and there is left liberalism. So we need to focus on fighting the battles of today. From the history of the tradition, we take in the fighting spirit, and we are ready to be courageous in fighting. But we also take the discretion, the intelligence to know which battles are important and which battles need to be fought now. So thank you very much. I have to leave to catch a flight. So that is my excuse, because I'm afraid to answer any questions. So thank you very much. Granthraj, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrit ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Srila Prabhupada ki, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ji ki. We are very, very thankful to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ji for taking out his valuable time and sharing the words of wisdom. Like they are, I think, so more precious and more valuable than the jewels the jewelers are selling outside. So we are very, very fortunate, and we request Prabhu ji to please come very often here and enliven and enlighten us. In this verse, like I was talking to Vasudhama Prabhuji, and I was sharing that in this verse, Prabhuji has kind of resolved so many things, what is relevance for today's age, and also what is relevant for ISKCON Dwarka at this point of time. So we are very, very thankful to Prabhuji for really giving end-to-end solution for everything. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji ki jai. So we'll thank Prabhuji by again chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So this is a small gift from our end to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji. Thank you.